Australia, Adelaide. I just came back from a little holiday. It was a fantastic time away. I'm all refreshed. My hair doesn't look too good because it looks like I just had a fight with the hair dryer. But no, it's been pretty windy in the last couple of days here. But I have an awesome guest with us. The album Amiga has just finally been released worldwide from the mighty band Epica, and we want to thank Nuclear Blast for allowing me to have this opportunity to interview one-on-one with Mark Jansen. Good morning, Mark, and good evening for you as well.
Good evening, good morning to you.
Yeah. So, Mark, just before we talk about the album, man, how you've been coping with all this madness that's currently going on around the world, and now that you've got a new album out, you guys did get put through the test with how it was arranged and recording, and things were pushed back a little bit due to the craziness. But for you personally, how are you coping, and did you have any setbacks personally in your life due to this madness that's currently going on?
Yeah, luckily there's nobody of my family who got something serious, so that's all okay. And the biggest difficulty is for the bands that I'm in. Nobody can play shows, obviously, and while shows are the main income for bands to make a living. But luckily also there was this album to look forward to, so that kept me also going. There was all the time the thought, oh, this album is coming up. And so hopefully from here on, things will slowly start getting better with the pandemic, so that things start opening up. But yeah, it's a matter of waiting and see what's going to happen, because it's something beyond our control, so that we cannot do anything about it. And so yeah, let's hope so. And I kept myself busy with sports, my hobbies. I also finished a lot of works at my house that had to be done. So I had quite a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing that you keep yourself busy, because that's what we need to do. Instead of focusing on the negative, we've got to focus on the positive. And
yes,
whatever way we can do that, we need to just continue forward. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And more importantly, music brings everyone together, and this new album, Amiga, shone a light on not just Epica, but just in general, because it looks like you guys, when you were recording this album, that you reinvented yourself with all the tests and tribulations that was happening outside of you guys. You guys had to look really deep down inside yourself and try to reinvent the creativity that you guys have, because the way I see it is, this is the 8th studio album of Epica's career, and the journey is just going to keep continuing on from here on in. But this one, it was more like a competition, not with yourself, but with everything around you, because it was just a well-organized, constructed album. Can you tell the audience just a little bit more about that? Because I truly believe you guys have reinvented yourself.
Yeah, that's true. We were like listening to all of our albums, and we thought we want to pick the strength of each album and bring them together and create an album with all these strength points. And that's what became Omega. And also the balance was really the key. So we wanted to keep the balance between the songs, between the styles that we are working in, between Simone and me, between guitars and orchestra. So we didn't want to have all the time, for example, the guitars and the orchestra together full force, but sometimes the guitars up front, sometimes the orchestra, and that created more space in the mix. So when you want to listen to the album from beginning till the end, it's much easier to process now than for example, the Holographic Principle, which was pretty full mixing wise. And so yeah, this album is like, feels for me like the conclusion of the whole career. That's also, it was not intentionally called Omega for being the end, but it's like the conclusion of the whole career. So if for whatever reason the pandemic will will stay forever, at least we made a great concluding album.
Well, see, there's some fans that have asked me to ask you guys, would you guys ever consider doing a full album acoustically for all the greatest hits that you collaborated over the course of your career? Because on this your YouTube channel, you can find an acoustic version of a song off the album. Do you guys ever thought going down the path of creating a full album acoustically with all the greatest hits that you guys done?
Yeah, that's definitely an option that we could do in the future. So we sometimes thought about that, and we're waiting for the right moment. But I think sooner or later in the future that's going to happen. Yes.
Yeah. Well, there you go, friend. You heard it from Mark himself. So I don't want to spread any rumors around. You know, you guys know me better than this. But anyway, when you guys released a new video early this morning, Skeleton Key, Australian time. Just talk a bit more about that, because that is just so well done, and more importantly, with the other songs that have came out, the crown is still being worn by Simone. Everyone talking about the crown that Simone wears, that is still part of her makeup, and more importantly, I just love Simone's vocals on this album. She is a well constructed singer, and more importantly, probably an underrated female singer in Europe.
Yeah, the Skeleton Key. That's we worked with Grupa 13 from Poland, and they also work with Behemoth, for example. And we saw their videos that they made in the past, and we were really blown away by their quality. So we discussed with them for the Skeleton Key, and also Abyss of Time. That was the other video by the same production company. And we discussed with them the storyline, and then they came up with good ideas as well. So we worked really well together. And when we were there in Poland, we only had to focus on our job, and they did all the rest. So it's really good for the mind when you have a team that is so well prepared, and they were. So yeah, Simone could wear whatever she likes to wear. She likes this kind of outfits, extraordinary outfits.
Well, see, I've spoken to Simone previously, a couple of years ago for the last album, and asked her this question. Every time when Epica come to Australia for a tour, you kind of bypass Nightwish, because Nightwish come, and then a couple of months later, you guys come. Has there ever been talks of you and Nightwish ever coming on a double headlining tour to Australia? Because you kind of just bypassed everyone.
Yeah, that would be great. We would be definitely up for that. We like the combination. We played like 2 or 3 times already, like with them. Also, one show was even with Nightwish, Epica, and Within Temptation. So that's the kind of shows that people really enjoy indeed. So hopefully we can one day do really like such a package, and then a whole tour. That would be really great.
Because like we mentioned before, the touring has been hard on everyone, because that is the main focal point of how bands create an income. And more importantly, with everything that's going on at the moment, we are starting to see a little bit here and a little bit there of tours starting to appear. But with festivals, so to speak, you guys did play Barkin a couple of years ago, and that was awesome. Do you think this year, with the way things are going, that festivals will still be like Barkin? Because I know Download in England is possibly still going ahead. Have you got any word whether they are still going like Festival was?
Yeah, they start cancellations start happening now on a daily basis almost. It's sad to see. For example, today Graspop is a very big festival in Belgium got cancelled, and already last week Hellfest from France, and I see it very dark for this festival summer. I don't think many of them will happen. Maybe that some will happen with a lot of restrictions, but not for sure not the normal way. No.
No. And not only that, let's get back to the album, because bands are going to find it pretty tough playing live, especially when there's a new album out, and the fans will love to hear new songs and whatnot. But more importantly, with the new album, radios are going to pick it up. That's a given. Radio stations are going to play your music, but behind it, it's a bit hard to sing live music. I want to ask, how would you guys focus ahead, knowing that there is craziness in the world, but you guys want to play your new material to the audience? Is there a way that you guys can work around it, whether you do a live stream or a little small venue gig here and there?
Yeah, we definitely want to play our new songs, and especially as many of the new songs were written to be live songs. So there's a whole bunch of songs we really cannot wait to play. And if it's not on a normal gig, then we will consider indeed doing something like a live stream show, because we want to do something, preferably a real show, but if not possible, then the live stream is a good second option.
Now, when you were recording this album, were you all in the studio together, or due to the restrictions you had to pick a time and place so you guys can go into the studio?
Yeah, everything pretty much happened the normal way, because there was the pandemic in the beginning was not severe yet in the Netherlands, and then at a certain point, when we just were finished with the choir recordings and the orchestra, then the lockdowns started, and I was back at home. I live in Italy. I couldn't go to the studio anymore, so I recorded all my vocals in my home studio. Luckily, I had just my home studio finished, so I could record it all over here. And Simone, she could not travel to the studio, so she booked a studio in Stuttgart, where she had the producer remotely there as well by a Skype connection. And then she recorded like that in that studio all the parts. Once everything was set up with the right microphone, because they did some experiments with several microphones, once they had it a good setup, things went pretty smooth with that as well.
Would you think technology now is more advanced compared to when you guys first started? Because now you can go on Skype like you and I can. We can record our vocals or guitar tracks and send them off to the studio, rather than being in the studio and have to do hours and hours and hours, if not weeks, of recording. Because I always say it this way: there is a love and hate relationship with technology when it comes to the music business. The good thing about it is, when you have these type of issues with lockdown and restrictions, you can do this via Skype. But at the same token, you have the negative where you want to be collaborated together because it's raw, you can feel the energy of each other, and you can actually read the body language of certain members. I want to ask you, do you see technology now as an advancement to the future, or is there still some loopholes that we need to fix up here and there?
Yeah, I think that we're going to face some crazy times even with technology in the upcoming years, because things are developing so fast now that artificial intelligence. So I think that within the next couple of years, we will find ourselves in really crazy situations. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a bad thing. It can happen. It can turn out bad if everybody loses their minds, or that artificial intelligence takes over, so to say. But let's hope not. Looking at the bright side, it gives us also a lot of possibilities. Even maybe we can create a whole universe ourselves once the quantum computers are so good that they are, can become what they expect, then we can create really literally universes. So it's, I think it's going to be a very interesting time.
Yeah. And it's going to be a testing time too. It's going to test our willingness, our mentality, and more importantly, it's going to see how well we can adapt and adjust to certain things. Because that's basically what the test is. It's how to adapt with the new measures and how to readjust at certain things. We don't have to change a whole great deal. We've just got to adjust certain things to fit our mistake of our character, because that's how I live my life. If I don't fully understand it, I'll look into it and try to adjust certain things to make me understand. And that's what brings me to Epica, that you might not get Epica at the start, but over a period of time, you will seem to see the journey. It's a journey. Epica's music, it's a journey. You just can't listen to one song and then turn it off. You've got to listen to the whole album and let it take you on its course on its own. That's basically why I like Epica, and this album, Amiga, that has taken me to a journey. Because you guys on this album look like you went back to your original roots and just crafted around that to make it a stand focal point on Epica's history. And more importantly, you didn't really change that much. All you did was just adapted to what was going around you and took that as a positive and made it a story the way it is.
Yes, that's a good description.
Yeah. Because I know that some people are getting wrapped up in the craziness and that, and I don't get wrapped up. I live my life day by day, and music is one of the best ingredients to have. And more importantly, with the way that you collaborated, Simone, and all the other members, it looks like you came in with the vision, you came with the goal set in place, even though you had time restrictions on you due to the pandemic and pushed things a certain way. How did you personally, Mark, adjusted and adapted to those things? Because it's a story. This album is a dead set story, and what a well orchestrated story it is.
Yeah, I'm really happy that you also experienced that way. And we every song has its purpose indeed on this album. Every song has its place on the spot it has to be. And we even looked like we had like a certain sequence, and we wrote some extra parts wherever we thought was needed for the journey, so to say. So that's why balance is the key for this album. We really wanted from the beginning till the end that it would work, so that whenever there's a heavy part at a certain point, that also you have a kind of soft part where you can relax before everything goes full force again. So everything has a specific function on this album.
So when you're not touring with Epica, what music do you tend to listen to keep you relaxed? Do you go for the full-on heavy stuff, or do you like the mellow stuff to make yourself relax?
I have a very broad taste, so I listen to rock music, I listen to metal music, I listen to classical music, I listen to Irish music. There's many different styles that I like. I always say like there's good music and music that I don't like. Not necessarily bad music, because there's also music that can be quality-wise good, but I just don't like it. But I have very broad taste, and whatever fits the day, fits my mood, I can listen to.
Yeah, because this is how I became a person to listen to a lot of music. Here in Australia, we don't hear a lot of European singles on the mainstream media. We hear it on the independent radio, and that's a problem. That's a problem. Look, Australia is so diverse. We're so far away from the rest of the world and whatnot. But the core base fan They love the music that comes out of Europe. Do you see this as a shapeshift for you guys, especially now it's been the eighth studio album, that you guys are continuing to grow? Yes, you make brilliant albums worldwide, but when you see the fans in Australia really supporting your work, and even though we don't even hear it on the radio here in Australia, but the fans in Australia are coming out in droves to push this album probably in the top 5 of the ARIA charts in Australia. How well do you look at that for the Australian fans, even though we don't get to hear much of your music on mainstream radio?
It's not just Australia. I think in many countries there's on the mainstream radio no space for our type of music, which is a little bit of a pity indeed, because the many channels, they always say like we play what people want to hear, but that's in fact not true. Because if they would play what people really want to hear, there would be many different kinds of music that people actually listen to and want to hear. But there's a lot of economic reasons for why they play certain songs yes and certain no. But I think the strength of the metal scene is that it finds its way nevertheless. So even if it's not on the mainstream media, people who love this kind of music, they will first of all get in touch with it anyway somehow. And then they start looking for channels where they can listen to their music, or they start searching themselves, and from one band you go to the other, and that's a nice thing. So you don't necessarily need the mainstream media in radio stations to get the airplay in order to grow as a band. In the past, I think the bands were much more dependent on the mainstream media, but nowadays, due to the internet, there's much more independency.
Well, say even when Metallica first started, they weren't getting played on the radio for a while until they changed their direction. And yeah, you can classify Metallica being a little bit of a commercial band now because radio stations are playing it. But then you got the question: did Metallica sold out? No, they didn't. They just got big in a short period of time, and they kind of just went with it. And the same with a lot of other bands. But when it comes to me personally, because I have worked in the radio stations, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, I don't really get to choose what I can play or not, because it comes from the executive directors to decide what can be played. But I always go in with this philosophy: there's no rules to music. Yes, metal and rock, it's not really that popular. A lot of bands didn't get airplay on the radio station. But when you've got a fan like myself who loves rock and heavy metal, I'd like to bring that to the table and say, okay, this is what it is. As long as there's no swearing in it, I don't care. I can press the 7-second delay button on the radio station and I'm going to change it. But, excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat.
Don't worry.
No, I'm all right. I've got a drink here. But anyway, what I'm trying to get down to is, a lot of bands don't get played on the radio for that reason. It's because the other decisions are made by the top people in the radio stations, and I get it. It's a politics. It's a politics, and I don't necessarily like the politics behind the music business. But you guys give it to me, I'll play it. Don't worry about that. I'll play it. But we've got a couple of minutes to go before we wrap up. But I want to say, were there any material left over that you guys didn't put on the album?
Just one song. So there's this time not so much material left over. We focused on all the tracks that we wanted to have on the album, and just one kind of an outro kind of song is left over. And we will have to see what we will do with that one in the future.
Yeah. Well, guys, Amiga is hitting balls out of the ballpark here. If you like playing baseball, for me, I love soccer and football. I love soccer. And yes, the European Champions League is up there at the moment. go Glasgow Rangers. We won 5-2. We're in the final 16. We're in the final 16 of the Europa Cup. That's good.
Good job.
But more important,
Good job.
Yep. So more importantly, guys, you guys know what to do. Go to nuclearblast.com to get your album. If not, if you're like me, to go down to your local record store, if they still got record stores in your area, go down, buy the Amiga album, and support Epica. Mark, one last thing you'd like to say to the fans before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I wanted to say that when the pandemic hit, we actually were discussing an Australian tour, and due to the pandemic, it didn't happen. So hopefully we can in the future make that happen, because it was almost we were having we had a deal for an Australian tour again, but yeah, it's we will see when it's possible again.
And please, can you do me a favor? Can you give a big cuddle and a big kiss on the cheek to Simone, if you're allowed to do that? Because I want to say thank you for thank her personally for the chat that we had last time on the last album, because she absolutely loved talking to me, and hopefully I can have a chance to talk to her again in the near future, especially when you guys come down for a tour in the future.
I will do that, and I will give her a hug from you.
Thank you. Well, guys, you guys know what to do. Go and buy the album at all your participating outlets. Let's get this to be their best album to date that they've recorded. Let it get it up there. So, all right, guys, stay thirsty for metal. Mark, thank you so much for joining me. Please stay
Thank you for having me.
And look after yourself.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
There you go.